recently, and by recently I mean in the last year or two, I've been into soft vinyl toys in earnest. Before that, I had been picking up, one or two a year or something like that, very, very slowly accumulating things. But now I'm sort of in full-on Sofubi collecting mode, and I've really been enjoying it. It's an amazing world. There's a lot of people there who are making some really incredible toys. It's not cheap, for sure, and sometimes it's a little frustrating because you can't get them very easily. They're very limited in quantity, and you have to sign up for a lottery just to get the right to buy one of these sometimes. But yeah, I've really been enjoying the whole Sofubi experience, I guess you'd say. Part of that, though, has also been not just buying them, but also painting them for me. There's been really a rewarding experience. At first, when I started collecting them, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to paint them. I was a little intimidated because they require sort of special thinner to use, and you have to use an airbrush, and there's a lot of skills you have to learn in order to be able to paint these properly. The paints themselves are expensive, so there are quite a few hurdles you have to overcome, but I'm really happy with what I've managed to accomplish. I made a video, well, first of all, I made a video about Sofubi in general, which you can see here, and that sort of explains a little bit more about their history and what they are. You probably should check that out if you're not aware, but also I made, maybe 6 months ago, something like that, a video about some of the Sofubi that I have painted. And basically, since then, I've been working hard, and I've done, I guess, well, if you include the 8 or so Star Wars Sofubi finger puppets that I made, or painted rather, I made a video about that. If you include those, I've probably done 37, 35, something like that. I don't know. I'd have to recount since I made that last painting video. So I have quite a few, and altogether probably over 50 that I've painted in a little over a year, which is actually quite a bit now that I'm thinking about it. Part of my reason for doing so many sort of in a short period of time is that at the moment anyway, I have to paint them in my garage because there are fumes involved with the spraying of the airbrush and thinners and so forth, and I can't do it indoors. I don't have a special like spray booth set up or anything like that, so I've been doing it in my garage, but I have to only do that sort of when the weather is appropriate. So if it's too hot or too cold, it really is not appropriate for working out in the garage, and so I kind of had to fit them in when I could. At the moment, I'm in a period where it's too cold to paint, so I thought it would be a good chance to kind of do a little recap of what I have accomplished. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to go in, just briefly talk about each of these, and also, well, the experience I had painting them and the pieces themselves, what I like about each creator or each figure and so forth. So if you're interested in that, stick around. I have had fairly good response from my other Sofubi videos, and I realized that it's not really related to Star Wars or Java, but it is part of my collection, and so I figured it's my channel, and I should do what I'm interested in. So hopefully you will be interested in it as well. I thought I'd start with a bunch of figures that I painted from Moucoyama. He's one of the creators that I talked about in some of my other videos, but he's also one of my favorites. He has some very creative stuff that he has done, and his figures tend to be on the cheaper side for the most part, but they're really well sculpted and made, and they also have, many of them, lots of different parts that you can combine in different ways to sort of make your own custom figures. This one is a little different, though. This is Uncle Tooth Decay. Essentially it's a tooth, and it's just 2 pieces here. Not really any articulation, but he's got some tooth decay, as you might imagine, in various places. The reason I chose this, and the reason I chose to paint it in this way, is that this is Moukoyama's avatar on places like Instagram, so I thought it would be cool to have a version of that, and this was originally done in marble gold vinyl, and what I did was to, just spray some various colors over that, and then I went back in and did black for the mouth. But this was a quite an easy paint job, quite frankly. But it turned out pretty well, I thought. So just as we move on, I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible within reason for each of these figures that I'm going to be talking about, because it's easy to kind of prattle on for a long time, and I kind of want to keep it fast-paced if we can, but I will try and give as much information as I can. This next one is definitely one of my favorites. This is the Synthetic Demon Cyclops King, I believe. It's a demon that you would buy, as opposed to the other ones where you can kind of mix and match parts. This one is sold as a single figure, although, there is still some mixing and matching you could do. I got this originally in gold marble, and I was, for a long time, really reluctant to try and paint it because I was afraid, it looked cool in the gold marble, I thought, and I was afraid I would make it look worse. But I am really happy with how this turned out. It was a really involved paint job, kind of, experimental too. I used a lot of metallic, like purple and red, and then on top of it all, I used a special color shifting paint from Vinyl Wonder, which I don't know if you can tell in the camera or not, but it kind of shifts from blue to purple depending on the angle. And then, of course, I also used, some different colors underneath that, so it's not just all that, it's not just the color shifting paint, but that does add a certain something to it, I think. And I think it looks really awesome. I really like this color scheme, and I may try and use it again for something. It was complicated because I had to take this all apart. It comes in I don't know how many pieces, and even this axe is all soft vinyl. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so pieces. It is a bit of a problem though with the axe that it's a little it tends to be a little floppy, and also it can get bent out of shape fairly easily because it is hollow soft vinyl. But really cool. I really, really like this figure, and I'm really proud of how well it turned out. So as I said, one of the things I really like about Moucoyama's figures are that you can combine different pieces together. Generally, there's a head, arms, and then a body that you can, combine in various ways. Although I think for this one, at least the head and the body seem like they were kind of made to go together. This is a samurai zombie kind of head. You can see he's got the samurai top knot there, and then a samurai style suit of armor on the bottom. And of course I also went with this arm sword combination that kind of at least fits the general vibe, I think. I was pretty happy though with how the eyes in particular came out. It's kind of a, see if I can get a good look at that, kind of a metallic color that I put on top of some fluorescent white to really help it pop, and under the right lighting conditions it looks really cool. And I think the sort of zombie flesh as well turned out pretty well. This next figure from Moucoyama is called the Flapjack Octopus UFO, which is basically imagining a flapjack octopus as some kind of an alien riding on top of a UFO that's, squirting out some smoke. I decided to go with rainbow for the smoke because I love rainbow colors, and it kind of, it goes with the, I guess, the aesthetic of Sofubi. But yeah, I thought this turned out pretty well. Looks pretty cool. Similarly, we have this guy who is a kind of a weird egg head with some ropes kind of binding it up, and he's got a bunch of eyes that have crying blood, and then he's got this pretty disturbing fleshless body here where you can see all the internal organs and flesh and everything. I think I've never really painted anything quite like this before, but especially these lungs and things look pretty cool. This was originally, the body part anyway, and also the arms, were originally in a meat marble, you know, it's kind of a reddish, pinkish, white combination vinyl. And so when I painted over that, in some cases I took a Q-tip and put it in some thinner and used it to kind of wipe off the exposed parts here. So like all the white parts you see here and on these barnacle style arms, that's actually the vinyl showing through. So I thought that technique actually worked pretty well. On the back we have a mouth with some teeth on it too. So you can, if you prefer, turn his head around and have that be the front. But I kind of like the eyes better. They're creepier looking to me. Speaking of rainbow, I also did this Doshaburi Neko, which is a heavy rain cat, which I guess you could say is also another sort of mascot of Moucoyama. It's a cat with a rain cloud, you know, pouring down on him. Although you could, I guess, depending on how you wanted to paint it, you could paint it as if it was kind of a, you know, atomic bomb blowing up. But I decided to go with the rain cloud idea, but make it a rainbow, just to kind of contrast with the gray of the cloud and of the cat itself. I think it turned out pretty nice, actually. There he is. And you can see he's got little golden lightning and heart and, you know, little Lucky Charm type things in there. This next one is another example of kind of putting together my own combination of things. I think this one was kind of, to some degree, like leftovers. I had this head, which is called the Kodomo Dragon, kind of a joke, you know, a pun on Komodo dragon, which is a kind of lizard, and Kodomo, which is Japanese for child. And in this case, you know, it looks to be anyway a mouse wearing a dragon skin, maybe, and then he's got some kind of a gourd hat on with an octopus on the top. He's wearing kind of like these mollusk-style earmuffs or whatever they are. I don't know. You can interpret this various ways, and depending on how you paint it, it would change as well. For this, I decided to experiment with using some of the same henna tattoo stencils that I have used in the past to make this pattern on the shirt. And basically, you just put the vinyl stencil on there, and then, you know, use the airbrush on top of it to get the pattern. And for the most part, that worked quite well, I think. And it's a technique I'd like to experiment more with. And here we have another one that's a mishmash of different parts that I've put together. We have this kind of sumo wrestler style demon with a demon head that's got a bunch of different faces. As you can see here, there's a face, there's a face, there's a face, and then some demon wings, and then he's got a snake and a slug as his arms. You know, just really crazy stuff. But I decided to go with some, you know, color combinations that I hadn't used before, purple and green. And one other thing I did with this that was kind of an experiment and I think turned out well is I used a transparent vinyl head and body, painted some of it from the inside white so you could see it through, and then I masked off the white parts, so the eyeballs and these little whatever these are, these growths, I masked those off and then painted the rest of it and then took them off so that you could see this nice kind of cloudy but clear effect. And I thought it actually worked quite well, especially for this eyeball. I don't know if you can tell in the camera, but you know, you can sort of see in there a little bit more than you would if I had just painted this white. So I was pretty happy with that. The final two items I want to show you are a little on the weird side, I will warn you. This one is called Body Suspension Bed Mary, and that may not make a lot of sense to you, but it combines two ideas. One is the idea of people who like to be suspended from hooks embedded in their flesh, which is a thing, and then also a baby's merry-go-round, as they say in Japan, but what it means is actually a mobile that you would have above a baby's crib. And so his concept is that, you would have several of these things in a mobile going around like that. Interesting concept, a little weird, to be honest, but I decided to go with it, and I put a brain head on there. And originally I had it painted in a bit more of a brain-like color, but I didn't think it stood out enough from the body, so I decided to go with the trusty rainbow effect, and I think that looks pretty cool. Now our next one is even weirder. This is called the Super Masochist Cyclops Tank. And so, I mean, I'm going to be a little careful describing what this looks like, just for obvious reasons, but basically you got this person here dressed up, and kind of a bossy type person, let's say, who likes to ride on top of this other person. This is actually just two pieces. You have the body and then the head. This is the Oni Baba, the demon grandma head, and I decided I would go with, some really thick makeup on there. Seemed appropriate. And then this, the tank itself is a completely organic-looking tank with, like, teeth for the treads and other parts for other things. It's definitely an interesting piece. Very, very unique, let's say. But, it was a challenge to paint. As with all of these, I disassembled it all and, kind of agonized over all the details. But I think it turned out really nice in the end. Oh, by the way, on the bottom, it's got some sort of fancy, sort of velvet padding cushions on the bottom of the tank. I thought that was pretty cool. This big fella here is called Cestoda, and he was a collaboration between Toy Art Gallery and Miscreation Toys. I originally saw this, not this exact figure, but this same type of figure in Japan, and I was really impressed by it. It's very large. I don't know if you can tell, but, I mean, look at that. Very large and imposing. The one I saw in Japan was unpainted, but it was kind of a marbled vinyl. Looked really cool, but I didn't have any room in my luggage for something like this, and it was kind of expensive, so I put it on the want list for later, and thankfully, a little while ago, Toy Art Gallery mentioned that they were selling some blanks of these figures, and they just had some left over, I guess. And one of the ones that they had was just a white vinyl blank, and that's the one that kind of interested me the most, because I wanted to try something. I hadn't, at that point, figured out exactly how I was going to paint it, but I knew I wanted to try something where I would paint and then rub off with vinyl thinner. That's a common technique with these figures, where you just spray the entire thing one color, and then you take some vinyl thinner on a paper towel or something along those lines and wipe off most of it, leaving shading in the crevices and everything. It's kind of similar to a wash in reverse, if you're familiar with acrylic paints. But anyway, I decided with this guy to do that with black and then wipe it off so that it revealed the white, and it looks so good this way that I just decided to pretty much leave it that way. I like this monochrome look a lot, and it actually matches the artwork that they put on their header that they used, on the packaging. So I decided I would just go ahead and recreate that by painting his eyes kind of a nice glowing reddish-orange color. And yeah, this came out really well. I wouldn't say this was a hard paint job, but it's so large that it did take quite a while to, just do it all physically. And in a few cases, I did go in and touch something up. If I took too much paint off, I might put a little bit in with a brush. But for the most part, this is all just done by that rub-off technique, as I mentioned. This next figure is called Trinity Bishamon. And if you want the whole story behind kind of what are you supposed to represent? You can check out my Instagram page where I posted, when I first posted this guy unpainted, I kind of went into stuff that I honestly had to research some of this myself, just to figure out all of the kind of historical references, and also some, Japanese cultural references, like, there are elements of his armor here that are actually directly taken from a Japanese collectible sticker from like the 80s and things like this. So, it's kind of a lot. But anyway, I really, first of all, like Mirak Toy, who's the creator of this. This creator, Mirak Toy, was, I would say, the one who, more than anyone, got me interested in Sofubi and collecting them and appreciating them as an art form. And he does a lot of things where he combines sort of Buddhist things and pop culture references and robots and stuff like that, which I find really appealing personally. And I just started collecting his stuff. I have a lot of it now. He's one of my favorite sculptors and creators. But anyway, I had this guy. These pieces are not easy to find oftentimes, and they're quite expensive sometimes. I was able to find a couple of them unpainted. There were basically, not to get into too much detail here, but another company kind of bought some of his metal molds and started making, with his permission, some unpainted versions of his figures. And so I was able to get this one in a clear vinyl that had just been sprayed with some sort of transparent red paint, and I didn't feel too bad about covering that up with my own paint job. But I was still kind of nervous about whether I could live up to the sculpt and whether, I could even do it at all, not having done a paint job this complex before. And, I also wasn't sure, just figuring out which colors and what color schemes to use and things is often quite difficult too, because I didn't want to just copy what someone else had done. I wanted to come up with sort of my own take on it, which is what I have here. So I went with a white face and metallic blue, complemented with metallic red and gold on other parts of the armor, and then there's some sort of metallic purples and other stuff, silvers, all over the place. I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out, but I'm really super pleased with it. And this is one of my favorite pieces I've painted in the last 6 months or so. Speaking of Mirak Toy, he has also done, in addition to what he's done kind of under his own company label, he's done sculpting for hire for various companies, including this one here. This is Planet 3 Toys, an American company, put out this guy who's called Kappa no Kami-sama, which is the god of Kappa. Kappas. A Kappa, as you may be aware, is a figure in Japanese mythology. It's kind of a river spirit, kind of like an amphibious creature, lives in the rivers and streams, and they often have, their most defining feature probably is that they have a kind of a bald spot on the top that they have circled with, I don't know, maybe normally it would be some kind of like scales or something like that, but this I interpreted to be leaves, but it could have also been maybe, I don't know, straw or something. Anyway, I went ahead and painted this guy up. It was originally just in plain blue vinyl, and again, I wasn't sure how well I would be able to do this, but I was really quite pleased overall with how this turned out. I really like how I got this greenish flesh tone, and then the brownish colors here on the shell. I really am quite happy with how it turned out. You've got some interesting elements here. This is a Shimenawa rope that goes around trees and rocks and things in Shinto temples. So there's another Japanese cultural reference there. We've got some koi fish, carp there that, at least I decided that they would be koi. I assume that's probably what the intention was here. And so I painted them like that. We've got what I guess are little baby kappa. Now, he's interpreted the kappa to be turtles. I don't think that's necessarily always the case, but anyway, these are these are turtles that are kind of clinging to his back and front and everything, and he's got little leaves and debris attached to him as well. Anyway, I just thought this was an excellent sculpt. I mean, just look at that face. Look at that guy. Love it. For the next few figures I'm going to talk about, they're all going to be from Siccaluna Koubou. Siccaluna Koubou, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you may recall, is the company that I got a Sofubi blind bag, or lucky bag, from back about a year ago. And when I got that blind bag at the time, I got a number of unpainted vinyl figures in there, and I think I mentioned even as I made that video about it, that, oh, well, you know, I'm thinking about painting some of these, so it'll be great opportunity to paint them, and I have, as of this point, not only painted all of those, but I've bought more that I am painting as well. I can't remember, I think this guy, I'm trying to remember which ones I actually got in the blind bag and which ones I got individually. I guess it doesn't really matter, but we're going to start out with these two here. These are cube figures, that's what they call them. They're kind of all super deformed in some sense, where they will fit into a cube, and these are, generally speaking, kind of, as I say, super deformed versions of other monsters or creatures that they have made full-size figures of. So there's this guy here. His name is, if I look on the back, Dorol, I guess in English. He is, I think the intent is like a big mud pile with some skulls coming out of it. That's the name, it kind of implies that. But anyway, I decided to go with a bit more of a bright color paint job with some metallic rainbow colors and things like this. And, you know, it was just kind of playing it by ear and seeing what looked good. But, in fact, you know, that's going to be a common theme with all of these Siccaluna Koubou small figures. A lot of them I was kind of using for practice, I guess you'd say. But I think this turned out pretty well, and yeah, I'm a sucker for the rainbow color scheme, as you may have already guessed. Now, as for the other one here, this guy is Zongora, and that is basically a combination of zombie and gorilla, so zombie gorilla, Zongora. He is, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious what he is, but he also has kind of a weird horn coming out of his head and everything, and part of his fur has either been burned off or rotted off. And this guy in particular, he came in purple vinyl, and I kind of thought, well, you know, it'd be nice to make use of that purple color because it was kind of nice. So instead of just painting over the entire figure, I made use of the same rub-off technique that I mentioned earlier. And so all of this purple that you're seeing is actually the color of the vinyl, with some black in the crevices. And then for the parts where his skin is exposed, I kind of thought it looked like it was radiation burns or something like that, so I went with that idea and added these kind of fluorescent colors to that, and especially to his face, and his eyes are kind of glowing a fluorescent pink. And, you know, I thought with the combination between these fluorescent oranges and yellows and pinks and the purples, I thought it was actually a pretty nice combination. So, yeah, that's that guy. This little guy is called Bagoon, and I guess you'd say this is an example of things not quite going according to plan, because he was originally a kind of semi-translucent white figure, and I was going to try and make him sort of fluorescent pink, and I don't even know what I had in mind exactly, but as I was painting, it kind of just, it progressed in such a way, I guess, as I added highlights and things in different colors and experimented, it progressed so that he turned into more just a traditional red demon more than anything, which is, again, not quite what I was going for, but it looks good for what it is. You can still see a little bit of the pink and purple colors there on his back that I was trying to go for, but yeah, I'm not too unhappy about how he turned out overall. This guy is called Mighty, which is a kind of an unusual name for an unusual creature. He's got you know, a big hole in his stomach here. Looks like a donut hole or something. He is an unusual guy. An unusual amount of articulation also for this figure, because he's got four movable arms, movable legs, and also to some degree a movable head, although I don't know, mine doesn't seem to want to move much, so I'm not sure if I'm going to try and force that. With this guy, I was just trying to go all out and make a very colorful paint scheme, and again, kind of experimenting. I'm still at the point, I think, where I don't quite know what looks good together with these figures, and I wouldn't say that I'm 100% satisfied with this, but, you know, with this kind of low-stakes figure, I don't mind experimenting a bit, and I think the head in particular looks pretty cool. I like the, you know, the gradations between colors and things like that. Not too bad. This guy, also from Siccaluna Koubou, is called Igaru, and he's a little bit unusual as a figure in that he's got movable legs, but his arms and neck are not movable. Instead, you can move him at the waist, which is unusual for these kind of guys. This was originally a red figure, but I wanted to try and do something not just, you know, red-based, so well, it does have some red in it, but I went with a combination of metallic red and metallic purple, and I think it turned out really nice. If you look here on the back in particular, it's got some nice you know, gradations of color and things like that. I think it looks pretty cool. But when I finished it, I thought he looked a little bit plain, so I decided to go ahead and use the henna tattoo technique for the stenciling here and add some kind of gold. I don't know if this would be, I guess, you know, sort of tattoos maybe on this guy, or magical symbols, I don't know. And I think that looks pretty good, actually. He's got 3 eyes, 3 horns, 3 of these triangles, kind of all fits together. So yeah, not too bad. This guy is one of the larger figures from Siccaluna Koubou that I've painted. His name is Ozaru, which means big ape, and he was originally a clear yellow vinyl figure, not an attractive color in my opinion, and you really couldn't make out the details either in the yellow vinyl, so I wasn't going to feel bad about painting him, but I wasn't sure what color scheme to use. In the end, I decided to go with a kind of albino color scheme. There actually have been some albino gorillas. There's one called Snowflake that was in captivity for quite a while, I understand. I kind of used Snowflake as a guide to, you know, figure out how to paint this, because it's not just a matter of painting it white. You have to take into account the pinkishness of the skin underneath it that kind of shines through. I think it turned out all right. And of course, you know, we have the albino eyes and everything. I like the way the gold that these chains came with the figure originally. The gold kind of is offset by the rest of the coloration, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one, I think. This last one from Siccaluna Koubou is the biggest, and it's actually one of the taller of the Sofubi in my entire collection. This is one that I got in that blind bag or lucky bag that I made a video about from Siccaluna Koubou, and it was originally in kind of a an orange vinyl. Wasn't sure how to paint it. Like, this is such a bizarre creature. It's really difficult to know what it should look like, I guess, if you know what I mean. In the end, I decided I had some pearl paints from Vinyl Wonder. They're kind of like partially iridescent paints that I hadn't really used for anything, and I wanted to try them out. So I used those for this guy, going from sort of, you know, a navy color to purple to, you know, reddish and pink and orange, and then coming up all the way to a light pink up here. It was sort of based on a sunset or a sunrise, I guess. But overall, I think this looks really cool. The colors are nice. They look really nice in, you know, together. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. He's got a really goofy looking face. I'll give him that. Look at that. Reminds me, I think I said this at the time when I got him in the video, but reminds me of the Salt Vampire from Star Trek. This next item is from Don Luger, who is one of my favorite creators from China. I really dig his stuff. He pretty much specializes in cyclopses, or trolls, or ogres, I guess you'd say. Most of his stuff are some variation on that theme. Many of them are more realistic looking and very much larger than this. I have one of those that I was lucky enough to be able to get. Can't remember if I've posted about it on the channel before or not, but definitely one of my favorite pieces. This one I got, it's one of his more cartoony pieces, and I got this unpainted in a green vinyl, but I decided I would paint it this way, which is in kind of an homage to The Simpsons. They, in one of the Treehouse of Horror episodes, showed Chief Wiggum as a kind of, Harryhausen-inspired giant ogre, and in fact, they have made, other people have made full Sofubi figures based on that exact thing, but I couldn't afford those, so I got this one, and then I'm, kind of made my own version. But I think it turned out really nice. I like that he's using this acrylic eye in here too, because it really does add a lot of life to the figure, in my opinion. So he, has articulated arms, legs, and head, and a removable weapon here. But yeah, pretty cool little guy. This little guy is called Mini Mockbat, and as you may be able to figure out, he's a miniature version of the full-size Mockbat, which is basically just a, I think they took that one and shrunk it down to this size. I got this as a brown vinyl blank and painted it. This is from Paul Kaiju, who is someone who's been around in the Sofubi community for quite a number of years, I understand. He has done quite a lot of unique designs, and I've got a couple of his full-size pieces at this point, but when I painted this one, this was the only one I had. I would really like to get the full-sized Mockbat at some point, but haven't had a chance to do that yet. I decided to go with a red and gold color scheme, which I think turned out pretty nice, and then I used some kind of turquoise and light blue accents for whatever these things are. He's got his tongue sticking out, but I never quite understood what this is meant to be. It looks like a flower or some such blooming from his stomach, but yeah. Anyway, he's got a fair number of points of articulation as well. You can turn his head a little bit anyway. You can turn his arms, his legs, and even his tail. Although I'm not sure why he'd really want to do that. I think his tongue will also move, although I think it's kind of a little bit stuck in my case. But yeah, this is a really cool little figure. At the time I decided to paint this guy, who's called the Tower, I had been painting a lot of the smaller figures that are kind of really detailed, like those Moucoyama figures. And I wanted to do something that was big and maybe didn't have as much tiny detail. I wanted to do something that I could, get away with doing kind of a simpler color scheme with. And so I hit upon this. This is from Violence Toy. Interesting name. I decided I wanted to go with a sort of corroded bronze or brass looking look. I've always enjoyed that look. And so I, basically had the bronze color and then kind of a turquoise color that as I recall, I painted everything the turquoise color first, and then I went over it with the bronze using, well, depending on the part, I may have used a little makeup sponge or a brush or even the airbrush to kind of, get some of that metallic look on there. But I think it turned out pretty well. This guy, not a lot of articulation. He does have, these tend to get a little stuck, but he has turning head, he has arms that go up and down. And also his, if I can, there we go. His, body turns at the waist. Now, you may have heard something in there. He's also got a hidden feature in that you can, I probably should warm this up first with a hairdryer just to be absolutely safe, but if you take this arm, I'm going to get it off camera so I can leverage it a little bit better. You take this arm, it's actually attached to a chain, so I guess you can imagine that he would use this, you know, buzzsaw here as a weapon that he could swing around or something. Just kind of a cool little hidden thing. Of course, I did have to take this apart all completely and also take into account the chain feature there, but it was not actually too hard. I was also pretty happy with how I got this glowing eye effect on the face. I've talked about Wonder Goblin on some of these videos in the past, but they're an American creator who does some very whimsical and great sculpts for these Sofubi figures. I really, really like their style. And in fact, looking forward to the release of a full line of dinosaur figures, dinosaur-inspired Sofubi figures that is going to be coming out very soon. The Phantosaurs line, which they did a Kickstarter for last year. So stay tuned for that on my Instagram. But anyway, these guys I got as part of a lucky bag that they were selling at the beginning of last year. And I, you know, just used them to get some paint practice in. This is Abba Zaba, who's kind of an orangutan type figure. I decided I would use a couple of new techniques to me, or newish, I guess. One is the rub-off technique that I've talked about, where you paint it all black and then rub off so you just get the highlights. And because this was done in white vinyl originally, it worked really well. You can just wipe it off and then spray on top of that with partially transparent paint, like I did here, and it gives you nice shading. But I also used some fluorescent paints, as you can see. Just it's not really my style generally. I tend to go for a more realistic look, but I wanted to see how it would turn out, and I'm actually really happy with this. I think it looked really cool. There's this little tree sign there in 2022 Wonder Goblin. By the way, he also has the eyes, these sort of doll eyes that you can push in there, and I really do like them, at least for some figures. They give them a lot of life. Now, he came with this as an accessory. This is a sort of tree stump, first of all, with some mushrooms growing on it, as you can see. But he also has this mushroom on top, and the reason that's a separate thing is that you can actually take off, if you warm it up with a hairdryer or a heat gun, take off this hat and have him wear this instead as a hat. I think I like this one better, so I'm probably not going to do that, but it's cool that you have that option. This guy here is called Mushy. He's a mushroom, essentially, right? And I wasn't sure what to do with him either in terms of the paint job. It was just a yellow vinyl when I got it. And what I decided to do was, as I recall, I sprayed it all red and then wiped a lot of that off so you can see the yellow vinyl showing through in places to give it highlights. And then I sprayed on top of that a color shifting paint. I don't remember for sure which one it was, but it's kind of a... it just gives it a kind of iridescent quality there, which I don't know how well it comes through on the camera, but it looks pretty cool in person. And then, of course, I painted the mushrooms on the side. This is Otto 7 or Oto 7, depending on how you want to pronounce it. This is supposed to be a shop helper robot, I guess you'd say. And it was made by the Craftsman, or at least the original version of this, which was a real functioning puppet, was made by the Craftsman. He did the design of that, and he featured that in some of his videos. If you're not familiar with the Craftsman on the Steady Crafting YouTube channel, you should really check him out. He's kind of gotten the Sofubi bug himself and has been working on ways to make your own Sofubi without having like a whole factory and metal molds and everything like that. So it's definitely worth looking at if you're interested in that kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, he's made this robot design, and he paired up with Wonder Goblin to make it into an actual Sofubi figure, which is pretty cool. I, of course, took it all apart, sprayed it. I may have gone a little overboard on the weathering, I'm not sure, but I figured because he's supposed to be working in a shop environment that, you might want to show that he's been used and he certainly does look the part. And on the bottom here you can see we have the Steady Crafting logo and the Vinyl Wonder logo. Vinyl Wonder, of course, being the paint brand that I am using for all of these things. So very cool item, and it's very cool to have something from the Craftsman and Wonder Goblin / Vinyl Wonder, because they're, you know, some of my absolute favorite creators around. Last but far from least, we have this guy. I don't know if you can tell how big he is, because I can barely reach him, reaching all the way out here. He's 14 inches tall. His name is Bernie, and as you may be able to tell, that's a combination of Bert and Ernie. And it's made by Ralph Cosentino, who's an artist who came up with this concept, basically, you know, Bert and Ernie as a two-headed ogre, and I think it's brilliant. He originally, well, the first release of this figure was a rubber ducky color, all just yellow vinyl, which you can see here. And, you know, that's cool and all, but I really wanted to paint it. I did have some challenges with that, in that some parts of the figure apparently were glued together, so I wasn't able to completely disassemble this. I could get most of it, but like this, excuse me, this part here, the fur part of his, you know, his coat was glued to his torso, and also I believe the boots were glued to the legs and stuff like that. So I got a lot of it disassembled, but I wasn't able to do everything. I did paint everything here. It was quite an undertaking. The only thing that I didn't paint was this little rubber ducky here. This is the original rubber ducky yellow color with a kind of Watchmen-esque little blood stain there. But anyway, yeah, it was a challenge for sure. Again, something that I'm kind of unsure at the beginning if I can do it, but I was, you know, did my best, and it turned out pretty well, honestly. One thing that I wasn't sure how to tackle at first was the sweater here. You may recall Bert and Ernie have sweaters, or shirts anyway, that they use. They wear, Bert's one is vertical stripes and Ernie's is horizontal, and they have sort of signature colors as well. They're a little bit more complicated than this, because they also have small stripes that kind of go in between these, but I didn't want to do that. I kind of boiled it down to its essence a little bit here, but I used taped it off so that I could get nice clean lines here on the sweater, and I think it really turned out nice. The heads as well, you know, if those don't look good, the entire figure is not going to look good, and I think, if I do say so myself, these came out really nice. Let's see, anything else? The tail is kind of funny. He's got a little head on the end of his tail. But yeah, super happy with how this guy turned out, and well, that's it. That about does it for this look at the roster of Sofubi figures that I've painted recently. I'd be interested to know what you guys think about, well, these particular figures or creators, or about Sofubi in general. I've heard several people say that they had never even heard of this, you know, this genre of figure or of collecting until I had mentioned it on the channel, which is kind of gratifying to me, because I suppose I was in a similar situation at one point, and this has become definitely one of my favorite kinds of figure. So, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you again real soon.